Hey everyone! Today I'm sharing the last video of my Stretch Your Stamps December Daily Edition video series, and this will be part 2 of my videos featuring physical stamps. And the first part of this video will be a companion video to my December Daily Back to Basics product play lesson in the Ali Edwards classroom. So 2 weeks ago, I had shared 2 ways to use 3 of the image-based stamp sets from Ali Edwards' December Daily collection this year, and today I'm going to be sharing 2 ways to use 3 of the text-based stamp sets. And these are the 6x8 alphabet stamp set, the 6x8 numbers stamp set, and the 4x6 holiday phrases stamp set. So I thought I'd start off with the part that goes with my product play lesson first, and that way if you're only interested in that part, then you don't have to watch this entire video. In my product play lesson, which goes live today, I'm sharing 7 different stamping techniques that you can use with the Holiday Icons stamp set. And then I'm using those techniques to build my December in Numbers foundation page for my 10x8 album. And you'll see a sneak peek of that page here on the screen. So in this YouTube video, I'm going to start off by sharing how I use the 6x8 December Daily alphabet stamp set from this year to create this gold dipped effect for my title on this page. This particular technique is a lot easier to do with a stamp positioning tool because you are going to have to stamp in the same place more than once. So I'm going to be using my stamp platform from Holtz. This particular stamp positioning tool has been unfortunately discontinued in North America, but you can use any stamp positioning tool that you like the Misty would work just as well. I have a piece of white cardstock that I've trimmed to 7 3/4 of an inch wide by 2 3/4 of an inch tall. And I'm starting off by stamping my letters in red ink. This is the Vineyard Berry ink from Altenew. And I'm just stamping as many letters as I can at the same time with my stamp platform. Of course, December has more than one E in there, so I'm only able to stamp the letters D, E, C in my first go around. Now, before I remove the stamps from my stamp platform, I'm going to do some gold embossing. So I'm just wiping off all of the excess red ink from my stamps, and I'm prepping my piece of white cardstock with my anti-static powder tool to remove any oily residue that I might have left behind with my fingers. And instead of inking up the whole stamp with Versamark ink, I'm only going to ink up the bottom half of all of these letters and kind of do like a swiping motion upwards once I get to the middle to get rid of any harsh lines. So now when I apply my gold embossing powder onto my page, you'll notice that the embossing powder is only sticking onto the bottom half of each letter where I applied the Versamark ink. So I'm going to heat this up first and emboss it before moving on to the next few letters. I'll just mention as well that I'm using the gold tinsel embossing powder from Ranger, and it has like some gold glitter particles in it as well as the actual embossing powder, so you have to make sure not to tap it too aggressively when you're getting rid of any excess embossing powders, because I find that the glitter kind of flies away if you tap it too much. But the glitter, once it's embossed into the letters, doesn't rub off at all, and I think it just provides a really cool effect on this title. Now I'm going to repeat the same process to spell the words December on the top and numbers on the bottom. And I'm going to do my best to make sure the letters are all nice and lined up by using a ruler and this magnetic bar that I have here. And I think for the most part, I managed to get most of the letters straight. Now that I have that all done, I'm going to stamp the word in using the Variety Alpha stamp set from Ali Edwards and Laura Wonsik, so that my title reads December in Numbers. And now I'm just finishing up my layout. I decided to place my title piece vertically along the left side of this page. This is the green star pattern paper from the December Daily main kit. And I'm going to add a couple of canvas pockets to the right side of my title as well. My idea is that for some of the numbers that I'm documenting this December, I might want to add some journaling to give a bit of context or background to that number. So I'm going to add that journaling in these tags here. So, for example, one of my prompts is the number of advent calendars that we have in the house this year. And I might want to add a bit of journaling, just like 1 or 2 lines about which advent calendars we have. So that journaling will go into those tags. If you are enrolled in the Product Play class, be sure to check out the downloads section for my lesson as well. I've also included a list of more than 30 potential prompt ideas for your December in Numbers page. And I've also added a template for printing off some vellum labels for each of your prompts as well. So that finishes up the part of this video that goes with my Product Play lesson. And now I'm moving on to the second technique that I came up with to use these alphabet stamps. One of my favorite ways to use alphabet stamps is to combine them with different alphabet fonts to create custom, unique titles. And I did share some tips and tricks for how to pair different fonts together in a previous Stretch Your Stamps scrapbooking video. That one was featuring alphabet stamps. So I'll leave a link down in the description box below if you're interested in checking that out. For December Daily specifically, I thought it would be really fun to use these alphabets in combination with the smaller ones from the Variety Alpha stamp set to make some alphabet title cards for like an A to Z album. So during the December Daily party, one of the guests had shared her album from last year, where instead of documenting December in terms of like day 1, day 2, etc., she documented things that started with the letters from A to Z. And while I'm personally not going to take that approach for my December Daily this year, I thought that was still a really cool idea. And so I'm going to create some of these pocket cards that I can use throughout my album, but you could for sure create an A to Z and use them for an A to Z album as well. I'm starting off by stamping my main letter in the center of my 4x4 pocket card in a lighter ink. And then I'm using the smaller typewriter alphabet from the Ali Edwards and Laura Wonsik stamp set to stamp out the word that starts with that same letter. And I decided to stamp that out in a coordinating darker ink, but you can play around with using heat embossing or using different colors of ink, etc. Whenever I'm creating plain and simple pocket cards like this, I also like to add a bit of texture to my cards. So I'm just using my scoreboard to score at 1/8 of an inch all the way around these cards to kind of jazz it up a bit. I made a couple more of these pocket cards in different colorways. So I made a green one that says Holly and a red one that says Magic. And some of the stamping wasn't completely centered on these cards, but I still think they turned out super cute. Next up, I'm going to share a couple of different ways to use the 6x8 numbers stamp set, and my first technique is to stamp them repeatedly to fill up a masked shape. I used my Brother Scan and Cut machine to cut out a couple of masks sized to fit over some 3x4 pocket cards. So here I made one with the digital star stamps to make a star mask, and then the numbers from the digital number set in the larger font to make the number 12 mask. And I'm starting off by using some purple removable tape to stick the mask onto my 3x4 card so that it doesn't shift at all when I'm doing my inking and stamping. Then I'm inking up the areas inside the mask with my Distress ink. This is the colored bundled sage that I'm using first. And then I'm going to use my numbers stamp set to stamp out the number 12 repeatedly over this 12, kind of like at a diagonal across my mask, and making sure that I do have some stamping overhanging the edges of the mask. And I'm using the color Mountain Pine from Altenew here. It does look like a bit of a mess with the mask still on top of this card, but once I peel off my mask and reveal my ink blending and stamping, you'll see that the edges of the 12 are well defined with the ink blending, and to me that looks really cool. For my next card, I'm using the Distress ink in Fired Brick to blend all over this star mask. And then I'm stamping the number 24 repeatedly over my mask using the Altenew Vineyard Berry color again. And I love the variation and the depth in the red that I get with the ink blending once I peel off this mask. So from here, you can add another number on top of your stamping to kind of like reinforce that number, or you can add an embellishment or like a word phrase sticker. I tried the painted wood veneer numbers here at first, but they were just a bit too big for these masked images. So I ended up using the gold Puffy stickers, and I really like how those turned out. My next technique, featuring the numbers stamp set, is to use them on some tabs for your interactive pages. Here I've cut out a few sheets of pattern paper and layered them so that they go from narrowest to the widest in my 10x8 album. The poinsettia paper from the add-on paper pack is cut to 6 inches wide. The green winter botanical paper from the December Daily main kit is cut to 7.5 inches wide. The red plaid paper from the main kit is cut to 9 inches wide, and then I just left the black winter botanical paper from the main kit at 11 inches wide. And they're all the same height as well. You'll also notice that I've rounded the top and bottom corners on the right sides of the smaller pages with my We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper. And I'm going to use 3 of the star die cuts from the Star Mini kit as tabs to go behind each of these pages so that half of the star is peeking out from behind the right edge of all of these pages. And I'll save this interactive page for a day when I have multiple stories and use the backs of these pages to house my photos and journaling. For each of these 3 stars, I'm going to stamp out the numbers from 1 to 3 using an ink that most closely matches the colors of the outlines on these star die cut pieces. And so these ink colors are Coral Bliss, Mountain Pine, and Vineyard Berry from Altenew. And before I stamp each number, I made sure to cover up the half of the star that's going to be hidden behind each page so that I can position my number stamp in the middle of the half of the star that's peeking out. And I'm just going to be adhering these down very lightly onto the backs of my pages using my Tombow Mono permanent adhesive tape runner because I might have to peel these stars off the backs of my pages to attach my photos later on. And then I might add some stitching to stitch these stars back into place once I have my photos in. So there's an idea for a quick and easy interactive page featuring the numbers stamp set. The last stamp set that I'm going to be showcasing today is the 4x6 Holiday Phrases stamp set. And my first technique will be to use some gold heat embossing to fill in some of the lines on this striped pattern paper. I was originally going to do this on the inside of my 10x8 album cover, but I kind of chickened out because I was really worried I would mess it up. So I decided to try this out on the digital pattern paper version instead, and I'm still kind of debating whether I want to risk messing up my album or not. So we'll see if I decide to go for that later. Anyways, I'm starting off by applying some gold foil along a couple of these stripes here. I chose to go below all of the red stripes to make it look consistent across the whole page. So I'm just applying some 1/8 of an inch score tape along the bottom of the red stripes. And then after I remove the tape backing, I'm pressing my thermal web gold transfer foil into the score tape so that the foil is going to transfer to wherever I have tape. You'll see that I've already used up some of this gold foil, so the first time I press this down, the spots that don't have gold foil on them anymore won't have any gold foil to transfer to my pattern paper. So to fix that, I'm going to move my foil to a different spot that does have some gold foil left, and you'll see that it still transfers the gold foil to cover up the rest of that score tape just fine. And as usual, the gold foiling is a bit hard to capture on this video here, but it does look really spectacular in real life. Next, I'm just repeating that same process over again with the other red stripes on this page before I start with my heat embossing. So I really liked the fact that these phrases in this phrase stamp set fit perfectly in between all of these colored lines. And so I'm going to take advantage of that and stamp these word phrases just in a line across the paper underneath the green stripes. So I've never actually done stamping on this long of a segment before. I think that longest stripe there is about 11 inches long, and of course I don't have a stamping block that's that long. So I decided to use my Tim Holtz design ruler as kind of like a stamping block instead, because this ruler has grid lines, so it's really easy to make sure my stamps are nice and lined up perfectly straight. And it's also really easy to make sure that I'm stamping these words down parallel to the lines that are on my pattern paper as well. So similar to the last time I did the gold embossing, I swiped my anti-static powder tool across my page to remove any excess oils, and then I inked up my stamps with Versamark ink, then stamped that onto my page, sprinkled some embossing powder on, and then I also used just a dry paintbrush to remove any stray embossing powders that had stuck onto my page. And then I heated this up until it was all nice and smooth and melted. You can find this pattern paper in the digital shop. I really like how they have the digital artwork from the album covers available to be purchased now as well. And so this is just a really easy way to add some more pizzazz to your pattern papers to make it a bit more special. My last stamping technique for today is using the stamps in this Holiday Phrases stamp set to stamp some frames around my photos. Because I'm going to be stamping on glossy photo paper, I thought I'd make some swatches of the Distress Archival inks that I recently got from my local crafting store. Now, these are inks that have the same properties as regular archival inks, but are in the same colors as the Tim Holtz Distress palette. And I was really intrigued by this set that came with this black, gray, and 2 browns, because I think if I ever need to stamp on photos or other glossy surfaces, it's usually going to be a neutral color like a black, a gray, or a brown. So I'm going to create my ink swatches here for my new inks to see how they look before I use them on my photos. These ink swatch templates are from Jennifer McGuire, and I'm using the Abstract Art stamp set from My Favorite Things to stamp out my swatches. And I'm most interested in the difference between the Black Soot Distress Archival ink and the Jet Black Archival ink that I already have. So it's a bit hard to tell the difference in this video, but in real life, it does look like the Black Soot is just a bit of a warmer toned black compared to the jet black. But they do look quite close, that in my opinion, I don't think you really need to have both of them. I decided on the Hickory Smoke color to stamp around my photos just because I didn't want the frame to be too bold, because I do have a lot of dark colors in my photos with the black couch and everyone's black hair. And I had purposely cut these photos out so that they would have about 3/8 of an inch border around all 4 sides, and that gives me just enough room to do my stamping. I'm going to pick out one word phrase to stamp around each of these photos. And the way that I like to do this is to start in one corner and keep stamping along that line. And then when I get to the other edge, I like to mask off the end of the phrase so that my frame looks nice and even all the way around. And the reason why I like using archival inks to stamp on smooth and glossy surfaces is because it dries pretty fast compared to other inks that I've tried, like pigment inks, for example. And it doesn't have that same kind of like alcohol scent that the stays-on inks tend to have. Just finishing up my stamping for the last photo here. These are the only photos that I have of Christmas last year because of COVID, and we weren't able to really get together, so we didn't really take that many photos. So I'll probably just put these into like a 4x6 mini folio album, and the stamped frames make it so that I don't really have to add too many embellishments to make the photos really stand out. And that wraps it up for my Stretch Your Stamps December Daily video series. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my December Daily Back to Basics product play lesson, and check out my complete Stretch Your Stamps video playlist for more stamping inspiration. I'll be back next week to share some more interactive pages for my December daily album, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for watching!